What is happening, everyone? Welcome back to the Lion's Den Academy. Today we're going to be continuing our verse-by-verse study of Matthew. And in today's video specifically, we're going to be diving into Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 to 37, where Jesus he basically interprets the law concerning oaths. So to start with, let's go ahead and read that scripture together here. So it goes, "Again you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil." So to start with, this teaching might here on the surface kind of seem a bit anticlimactic with what we've been going over in our previous videos that we've been studying together, where we hear about murder, chopping off your hands, plucking out your eyes, and stuff like that. But in actuality here, Jesus is addressing the very core of a person's character and heart. So I'm sure you've heard the saying and the old adage that a man is only as good as his word. And while that was a value that was fairly inherent, in most people back in that day, that certainly isn't the world that we live in now. Back in the day, a handshake was enough to bind someone to what they said. Nowadays, we have an elaborate system of lawyers, contracts, notaries, and signatures to try to ensure that we will simply uphold what we've agreed to. Even then, though, people are consistently found to be in breach of contract, held in contempt of court for failing to adhere to what they had legally agreed to. So with that being said, let's start by breaking down this passage bit by bit here. It first goes, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn." So really there are two key concepts here within this passage. When Jesus says that we are not to swear falsely, that can apply both to making a vow or an oath that you do not honor, as well as by swearing on anyone or anything other than God himself. When we're talking about vows, they are a specific type of oath where the person that's making the vow, they swear to pay something to God or do something for God in return for God's favor or blessing on a specific matter. The Old Testament expands upon this. For example, in Deuteronomy 23, 21 to 23, if you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay fulfilling it. For the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you will be guilty of sin. But if you refrain from vowing, you will not be guilty of sin. You shall be careful to do what has passed your lips, for you have voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God that what you have promised with your mouth. In Ecclesiastes 5, 4 through 5, it says, "When you vow a vow to God, do not delay paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay." And then in 1 Samuel 1, Hannah, the soon-to-be mother of Samuel, she vows to God that if he would simply grant her a son, since at that point she couldn't get pregnant, that she would devote her son to God as a Nazirite. And after making that vow, God did grant her a son, which was Samuel, and in turn she fulfilled that vow and brought her son to the temple and gave him to the high priest Eli to turn him into a Nazirite. And then the next bit of verse here, it says, "But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king." So with this passage here, there have been some Christians, such as the Reformation Anabaptists and the Quakers, that have taken the words "do not take oaths at all" so far as refusing to take an oath in any way, shape, or form, and that includes oaths, in a court of law or even a marriage ceremony. In fact, George Fox, the guy that founded the Quakers, he was actually sentenced to prison for refusing to swear on a Bible. His response to the court was this. He says, "You have given me a book here to kiss and swear on. And in this book, which you have given me to kiss, says, 'Kiss the Son.' And the Son says in this book, 'Swear not at all.' I say as this book says, and yet ye imprison me. How chance you do not imprison the book for saying so?" And as a response to this and his stance on the matter, the people in the United States and Great Britain, they're actually no longer required to swear on the Bible in court, and instead they can simply affirm to tell the truth. So do we think that this is Jesus's point here, to create a prohibition that wasn't under the Mosaic law even, in some attempt to overcome man's tendency to not be truthful? Well, I don't think so, and I think there's biblical evidence to support that as well. Now, I will say that there is one other scripture that some people do partially use to try to support the no oaths whatsoever argument there, and that is James 5:12. In that James puts an added emphasis on the command by prefacing it with the words above all. But the verse goes, "But above all, my brethren, do not swear by heaven or earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no no, so that you may not fall under judgment." Now, while James does add the extra emphasis here, he also instantly follows the words "do not swear" with either by heaven or earth. And we will be diving into that shortly here, but that's actually the main focus here of James, right? Other than simply the hard issue of being honest and keeping your word, Jesus is trying to convey in regards to how the Pharisees were making oaths on pretty much anything and everything other than God, in an effort to look holy and look like their word was backed by something. But the law actually specifically commanded God's people to swear their oaths in only God's name. For example, in Deuteronomy 6:13 to 14, which is the "Hear, O Israel" passage, it says, "You shall fear only the Lord your God, and you shall worship him and swear by his name. You shall not follow other gods, any of the gods of the peoples who surround you." In Deuteronomy 10:20, it says, "You shall fear the Lord your God, you shall serve him and cling to him, and you shall swear by his name." Notice the verbs used in those two verses. You shall fear the Lord your God. You shall worship him. You shall serve him, cling to him, and you shall swear by his name. So God's people here, they're to worship him and serve him alone. And they were also to swear by his name alone, because he alone is the one true God. And then finally in Leviticus 19:12, it says, "And you shall not swear falsely by my name, so as to profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." This command against swearing falsely by the name of God is actually tied to the third commandment of the Ten Commandments, which says, "You shall not take the name of your Lord, the name of the Lord your God in vain. For the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain." And that's from Exodus 27. Now, with that being said, let's take a second to talk about here what it actually means to take the God's name in vain here. In my personal opinion, I think that there's quite a few Christians out there that take this a little bit out of context. So to start with, the core idea of, if you're taking his name in vain, it's that you're using it emptily, lightly, or profanely. So for example, making a vow or oath to God, or using his name when you aren't being truthful, or you're not, intending to honor your words, that would be, pretty much the ultimate example of this. Obviously, using his name profanely or speaking about him unfavorably would be another example as well. And in that boat, we also do have, the pair of words with the initials GD that, fits into that boat as well. And now, while the Bible never condemns, these two words from being specifically paired together, they are words that no one, especially Christians, should be saying. Since, if it wasn't for God and for, the gift of his son Jesus, we would all be damned. And damnation is no light thing at all, and we should never wish that on anyone or any situation. Unfortunately, we tend to use our words far too lightly without thinking about the context of what we're thinking here, though, since, society has pretty much ingrained them into us as just natural speech. However, if we expanded upon that two-word statement, into an actual prayer, it would almost sound like, an angry email that you would type, but then you delete it before you sent it because you kind of, calm down and realize, the harshness of your words there. But for example, that email might go, "Dear God, thank you so much for your, constant blessings and faithfulness, and that you've sent your only son to die on your cross for me and all my countless sins. But by the way, just one quick request, can you damn this person that just cut me off in traffic?" Right? That just doesn't sound like something that a Christian would say. Now, while those are examples of actually taking God's name in vain, there are times that, like I said, some Christians can take this a bit too far. For example, if you ever watched the show Extreme Home Makeover, right? They always take that couple that's just been a blessing to the community, but has been absolutely struggling, and pretty much the whole community comes together to give them a brand new top quality house that's just done up perfectly for them and for every single person of the family. Now, while they're doing this, the family gets sent off to Disney World, and while this is happening, they come back, make a big reveal, which is then, of course, always followed by an emotional response by the family. And you're usually going to hear a couple of "oh my gods" at the reveal. And then, of course, in every room that they enter, it's the same thing. Oohs and ahs, and then a couple, at least one "oh my God" by at least one person in that family. Now, some Christians here, they'd be appalled at that, right? And they'd say that, hey, they're taking God's name in vain. I personally would disagree. In situations like this, where you are in complete shock and awe of a blessing that has been bestowed upon your life, and you're just so thankful to the Lord, or in situations where you are in simply complete shock, and you're feeling fearful and angry, and you cry out, "oh my God." Not only do I not think that is wrong or sinful, I actually think that you are putting your attention towards and directing your joy, anger, desperation, or frustration towards the one person that is either blessing you or that's going to be your source of strength to pull you out of that situation. Now, of course, we don't want to use this for any and every situation and loosely say "oh my God" towards any and everything and use it lightly. For example, we don't want to be like, "oh my God, they forgot to include a side of ketchup with my fries." Right? In these situations, you might hear some people then switch to the term "oh my gosh," which that same group that is against the "oh my God" camp there, they're going to be just as convicted and say that "oh my gosh" is just as wrong. Because it's pretty much equivalent, in their eyes. On that note, I'll just say, if you're convicted of that and you feel wrong saying "oh my gosh," then by all means, don't say it. But me personally, I've never seen a single translation of the Bible that calls one of the many names of the Lord our God as Josh. G-O-S-H. If that would be the case, then I'd probably be on your side with that. But otherwise, you might as well just be saying "oh my supercalifragilisticexpialidocious," and it's going to mean the exact same to me. So getting back to the concept of oaths, in the Old Testament, oaths were sworn in God's name only, and they were used for affirming important matters, not trivial matters, and they were true. They were to be true, at least. These were used to resolve disputes, to seal agreements or covenants, or to simply affirm the truthfulness of important declarations. In Hebrews 6:16, we read about the purpose of oaths, as it tells us that an oath given in confirmation is an end of every dispute. We can see an example of this in the oaths exchange between Abraham and Abimelech. Sorry, in Genesis 21:22-34, and that was used to both resolve a dispute over ownership of certain wells, as well as to seal a covenant that perpetuated the agreement about the wells. In that covenant, Abimelech said to Abraham, "God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me, here by God, that you will not deal falsely with me, or with my offspring, or with my posterity. But according to the kindness that I have shown you, you shall show to me and to the land in which you have sojourned." And Abraham said, "I swear it." And later, Isaac, Abraham's son, and Abimelech, they're going to reaffirm the same oath and covenant by exchanging oaths once again in Genesis 26:26-33. Now that being said, I kind of want to dive into what I briefly covered earlier about swearing by the heaven and earth that I mentioned both here in Matthew and in the verses of James that we read earlier. The Pharisees at this time, like I said, they would swear by the heaven or by the earth or even by their own heads, which is what Jesus is referring to when he says, "And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black." So, I mean, the things that they were swearing upon, they became quite ludicrous, and almost like a contest to see who could swear to the most impressive thing as possible, in order to try to put the most power behind the words, when in actuality, if you swear to God, that puts the absolute most power behind your words. But later in Matthew 23, we're going to kind of see how crazy all this had become. When Jesus says, "Woe to you, blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. You blind fools, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that has made the gold sacred? And you say, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift that is on the altar, he is bound by the oath. You blind men, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and everything on it. And whoever swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it." You see, the Pharisees here, they were coming up with all sorts of mental acrobatics in order to attempt to insulate themselves from any actual accountability to God. Specifically, some rabbis thought that as long as people didn't use God's name in an oath, they were simply free and clear to break it. You kind of see that in Leviticus 19:12. Therefore, they would swear upon, one's father, one's mother, Jerusalem itself, or something else that appeared to be sacred. It was like a child making a statement with his fingers crossed behind his back, meaning that, at that moment, it was okay to lie. Jesus tells them here, though, that they simply can't get away from their accountability to God by invoking things, since God is sovereign over all things. So then now I want to dive into the last bit of the scripture, which says, let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. While it might make you feel as though adding additional oaths and swearing by something adds weights to your words, having to swear or make oaths actually reveals the weakness of your words. Essentially, it demonstrates that there's not enough weight in your own character to confirm your words. As a general principle, people use oaths in regular conversations because their integrity is in doubt. Jesus, though, says here that the members of his kingdom shouldn't have to resort to oath-taking. Instead, we're called to simply say yes or no. So when Christ said, "Let your word," he uses the Greek word logos, which can be translated as not only word, but also as speech or communication. This emphasizes that not only should our oaths be truthful, but also in our regular daily conversations, everything that we should say should be truthful as well. We should make an effort to avoid exaggerations that we might use in order to display ourselves in a more favorable light as well. Our words at all times they must be completely truthful. So now I want to take a second to talk about what it means to swear by someone or something. In the Old Testament, when you swore by someone, you were essentially invoking that person as either a corroborating witness to affirm or attest to your words, and as a judge against you if your words were found to be untrue. Additionally, if you swore by someone, you were also using someone whose character was to be viewed as pretty much a reliable testimony. At that same time, you're also acknowledging your own accountability to that person, and we're agreeing that you expected to be judged by them if you were found to be speaking falsely. This is why in Hebrews 6:16 it says, "Men swear by one greater than themselves," meaning to one to whom that they are accountable. With all that being said, I just want to sum up everything here real quick by saying that I personally don't believe that Jesus' point in Matthew 5 here is that oaths are inherently evil or that oaths aren't legitimate. Instead, I think that the scriptures tell us that, the manner of oaths and the things that were being sworn upon by the scribes and Pharisees in its entirety was evil, because the oaths were intentionally sworn, to any and everything except for God, in a foolish attempt to try to sidestep any accountability. And with that being said, we're going to wrap up today's study in video. I hope you found it informative. Feel free to reach out with any questions about this or any other Christian-based topics as well. I will either respond to them directly, or if it's something that I think deserves a video, I'll definitely put that up as well. Additionally, it was my dad that passed away, like I mentioned in a previous video, that he was he was the one that really wanted me to do the lecture notes and stuff for the videos. They do take a bit of extra work, so I haven't been doing them for the last couple. But if that is something that any of you all find beneficial, please let me know in the comments, and I'll start that back up, because the whole purpose of this channel is to serve you guys and what you need and what helps you retain this and grow with that. So with that being said, I look forward to seeing you next time. You have a great day. God bless you and keep you.